Hello, everyone. I decided to re-air my original video on my fibromyalgia diagnosis story that I aired back in January of 2023. I'm getting a lot of new subscribers, which is great, and a lot of questions about my fibromyalgia, how I got it, all of that. Since the airing of that video 3 years ago, I have developed a couple more fibro complications. I was diagnosed with a couple of spinal abnormalities, and my doctor thinks that I was quite possibly born with those abnormalities, and it simply went undetected with no symptoms up until I went through Lupron. It's a category of spinal issues called occulta, meaning hidden, not easily detectable. And I've also developed partial vision loss. My pupils don't work anymore, which is why I'm almost always living in tints or sunglasses. And I want to reiterate that all of this is extremely, extremely rare. If you have fibromyalgia, please do not worry that these things are going to happen to you, because in all likelihood they won't. By all means, stay on top of your healthcare, but what happened to me is very much the exception and not the rule. I just want to make that clear. All right, without further ado, here is my original diagnosis story. All right, bye guys.
Hi, shalom. Before I get into today's video, I want to take a moment to say thank you so much for all the support as I took the plunge and finally started this channel. I am honestly blown away by how quickly this thing is gaining momentum. You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much. I decided I am going to bite the bullet and share my fibromyalgia diagnosis story. I waffled back and forth on whether or not to share the full story for years. I ultimately decided to just do it. We need universal health care, like we need to take in nourishment and expel waste, and people with chronic illness need to know they're not alone. And I feel like if I can make a dent in either of those efforts, I have succeeded. Okay, so everything started back in 2014. Oh, that was a year, to say the least. In the beginning of 2014, I began having a lot of complications with endometriosis, my reproductive disease. And endo is a disease where uterine tissue, or endometrium, grows outside the uterus. And it can grow pretty much anywhere, in the abdominal cavity, in your ovaries, digestive system, anywhere. In rare cases, uterine tissue has been found in the lungs and the brain. Up until 2014, my two complications from this disease were infertility and needing narcotics to get through my monthly periods without wanting to die. So in 2014, things started getting really rough. Things started happening that weren't normal for me. I started losing hair, which had never happened before. I was getting cramps and pain even when I wasn't actually on my period. So in the summer of 2014, I had a diagnostic laparoscopy. A laparoscopy is surgery, but they can do it with a few smaller incisions instead of one or two big ones. So it's still surgery, but it's much less invasive and has a quicker recovery time. And this is the surgery they use both to diagnose endo and to determine whether or not it's coming out of remission. By now you're probably wondering, okay, what does this have to do with your fibromyalgia diagnosis? Sit tight, we're getting to that. So I had the surgery, I went home the same day. Everything went great. The medical staff was fantastic and my recovery was within normal limits. I was doing great. The bad news, though, was that my endometriosis had come out of remission. I asked my doctor where in my body they had found the tissue, and her answer was, and I quote, absolutely everywhere. By that point, I had tried every birth control option for managing my endo. At my post-op checkup, my wonderful doctor told me I had two choices: Lupron shots or a hysterectomy. I was only 26 at the time, and I was still holding on to the hope that maybe I could be a mom someday, so I opted to go on the shots. Lupron is a hormonal treatment that's used for a few different things. Sometimes women doing IVF get put on it. It's also sometimes used in prostate cancer treatment. With endo, it's basically medically inducing menopause. The idea is that this sort of resets your hormones and puts the endo in remission. In 99.9% of cases, women go into full remission without any complications. I fell into the less than 1% who have lifelong debilitating complications. Getting polio from the vaccine is more likely to happen than what happened to me. I lost even more hair than I was already losing, and had I lost any more than I did, I would have accepted my sister's offer of taking me to get fitted for a high-quality wig. I need to reiterate that what happened to me is extremely rare. If you have endometriosis, please don't look at my story as the norm or take it as a reason not to go on the shots. If you have endometriosis and you're struggling with pain, please talk to your doctor about all of the different treatment options. I had really severe side effects, and I would sometimes even get partial or full paralysis in my legs, and I'm not exaggerating. Sometimes I literally could not move them or couldn't move them very much. Before I got a wheelchair, sometimes I was basically army crawling to get to the bathroom or get a glass of water or whatever. And all of this completely astounded my doctor. She had never seen this reaction to the Lupron shots. Toward the end of my 6-month Lupron stint, the paralysis left, but it was replaced by excruciating pain. I already had to deal with that once a month from my endo, but this was all the time, and not just my abdomen and my back, but like my whole body. My doctor didn't know a ton about fibro at that time, but she was suspicious that that was what we were dealing with, so she sent me to a rheumatologist she knew, and I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia on my 27th birthday. Fun times! The rest of that year was this hazy blur of rigorous physical therapy and home exercises to regain as much function as I could. One question I get asked a lot is, how did they know it's actually fibro when it's similar to other conditions that can also be hard to diagnose, like multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's or Lou Gehrig syndrome? The answer is you have a lot of blood tests. MS, Parkinson's, and Lou Gehrig syndrome generally cause abnormalities in the blood that they can see, whereas fibro does not. If I had the option of going back and doing that whole diagnosing process differently, I can think of a few things I would have done. I would not have had my fibro treated by a rheumatologist. That's the old school way fibro was handled because it causes muscle and joint pain. But now the medical community understands that it's a complex systemic condition, and the medical community is now learning that having a neurologist and or pain specialist on your care team is very important. And I didn't see any real progress until I started seeing a pain specialist and got approved for medical cannabis in 2019. Cannabis is such an amazing plant that has helped so many people, and we really need to legalize it at the federal level. There are so many wonderful things we could do with this stuff. And contrary to popular belief, it's much safer than most pain meds. And for most people, it's not habit forming. It's changing my life. And I am not exaggerating. After I developed fibro, I developed a few other conditions that often come with it. I have hypothyroidism, which means your thyroid either doesn't work or doesn't work very well. The mild asthma symptoms I had as a kid turned into full-blown asthma. I was officially diagnosed with joint hypermobility syndrome in 2021, which is basically a step down from Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And both joint hypo and EDS are extremely common in people with fibro. I also have irritable bowel syndrome, which I already had, but it was much more mild before I developed fibro. I had to go gluten-free starting when I was on Lupron and for at least a couple years after that, so I could eat without wishing for death. Thankfully, I'm able to eat gluten now, but unfortunately, my IBS is still very much hip and happening. Another complication is chronic fatigue syndrome. That was a huge problem for me until recently. I got put on a low dose of Ritalin, which they've started trying off-label for chronic fatigue, and oh my gosh, it is already changing my life. I feel like a person instead of a person-shaped blob who just can't do anything other than watching TV most days. Living with fibro is living with constant ebb and flow. My mobility can range from looking normal to using my wheelchair or walker to not even being able to get out of bed. One thing my partner and I are still trying to figure out is healthy, nuanced ways to look at the future. We don't want to get our hopes up per se, but at the same time, medical science advances so fast these days that we don't know what could be possible down the road. I mean, look what's happened with Parkinson's research and treatment. It's absolutely remarkable these days. And the same could very well happen for other health conditions. All right, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about today. Thanks again for all the support. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please do me a huge favor and hit the thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon. Like you Bye.